Maimane, together with the COPE leader Mosioua Lekota, are giving a briefing outside Parliament on the rights of independent candidates to contest elections. And this follows the Constitutional Court's ruling last month regarding independent candidates. Let's listen in.
Independent candidates. I have given this notice in respect of my intention to introduce the National Assembly a private members' bill, namely the draft electoral law amendment bill 2020, and to introduce to invite comments thereon. I'm doing so in accordance with section 73(2) of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, 1995. The Constitution. I am proposing to introduce the Electoral Laws Amendment Bill 2020 in Parliament during the fourth quarter of 2020. The explanatory summary of the bill will be published in the Gazette. Initially, we had hoped it would be this weekend, but it probably will be next week. This is a very important development, and why this is so is for the following reason. Firstly, my being as an individual is immersed in the history of our country. Growing up as a young man, I reversed the 3,000 people who met in Kliptown. I revered the 3,000 I'm not being able to. This thing is breaking off. I went.
Maybe.
Give me a call. Yeah, that will be better.
Oh, but that's the policy, though. Sorry, that's not what.
Do you want your freestyle?
Yeah, you got that?
Yeah, but you got mine.
Oh, this is the policy.
This is the policy document. Sorry, man. Sorry, gentlemen. Let me just get my copy. Yes, yeah. Okay. Now, the explanatory summary of the bill will be published in the Government Gazette on Friday next week, in accordance with the Rule 2761C of the Rules of National Assembly. Firstly, my being is immersed in the history of our country. Growing up as a young man, I revered the 3,000 people who met in Kliptown on the 26th June 1955 as the Congress of the People. I may just underline that I joined the African National Congress on Robben Island when I landed there the first time. And it was there that I got thoroughly immersed in this history, because leaders such as Walter Sisulu, President Mandela, and his co-accused with whom he was serving time, devoted a lot of time sharing the information with this. And immediately, I took a decision to join the African National Congress on Robben Island. And from then on, for me, the Congress of the People's decision on the declaration that was made in 1955 became the central issue of my life. Now, the year 1994 was a watershed year. South Africa witnessed the demise of apartheid and the birth of the new democracy. There was not enough time to get everything right as a new period of politics in our country was ushered in. This was particularly so in respect of the electoral system. It was agreed that the closed list PR system would be used for the first time for the first election, and that thereafter a new system would be brought into existence. Regrettably, the electoral system for the National Assembly and provincial legislatures in South Africa up to now has been one where political parties and not individuals contest elections. All of you may recall that at the Congress of the People, the declaration, the paramount declaration was that the people shall govern. But now this actually deviated from that. When many of us broke away from the ANC in 2008, we very deliberately called ourselves the Congress of the People to make certain that the dream of our forebears who had gathered on the field in Kliptown was made a reality. Now we are doing just that, because enshrined in the Constitution at Section 18 is the right for the people to govern. But that was not fulfilled. The full details of how this must be done is set out in our policy document, which you will be provided with at a later stage. So what do we want to achieve in this bill? Firstly, we want South Africa to engage in a vigorous debate around the following issues. Independent candidates. As the years wore on and every attempt to reform the electoral system was stymied in Parliament for one reason or the other, voter disenchantment grew correspondingly. To exacerbate the situation, voters were unable, in terms of current Electoral Act 1998, to choose an independent candidate to represent them in Parliament more effectively. The situation prevailed despite the fact that Section 19(3)(b) of the Constitution provides that, quote, every adult citizen has the right to stand for public office and, if elected, to hold office, unquote. This right, entrenched in Section 19(3)(b), has finally been determined in the recent Constitutional Court judgment in the New Nation Movement (NPC) and others, versus the President of the Republic of South Africa and others. The New Nation Movement judgment. In this matter, the Constitutional Court considered whether the Electoral Act 1998 unjustifiably limited the right in Section 19(3)(b) and also in Section 18, freedom of association of the Constitution, by making the accession of political office possible only through membership of political parties. After considering and examining the content of these rights, including other sections of the Constitution, the Constitutional Court declared the Electoral Act 1998 to be unconstitutional, to the extent that it requires that adult citizens may be elected to the National Assembly and provincial legislatures only through their membership of political parties, thus paving the way for independent candidates to stand for elections. While voters who vote for an independent candidate will enjoy the benefits thereof, all others, without exception, should equally enjoy a very direct link between themselves and the genuine representatives for reasons that are abundantly obvious. This is absolutely necessary. In fast-tracking the ever so long delay in the upliftment of the majority of South Africans who have not benefited to the extent that they they have with the coming of democracy, proportional representation and open list PR system. After each general election, each qualified party is allocated a number of seats in the National Assembly and provincial legislatures, calculated according to a formula contained in Schedule 1A of the Electoral Act 1998, Act number 73 of 1998, Electoral Act 1998, reflecting as closely as possible the promotion of voters that qualifying parties obtained in the general elections. Each party, until the last elections, determined which of its members will fill the seats so allocated. While the requirement of the proportionality is met in such a system, voters are estranged because a direct relationship with a member of parliament is absent, and a lack of accountability for members of the relevant legislatures to its voters prevails, much to their chagrin. The increasing and continuing alienation of voters from the political system is detrimental to democracy and the well-being of society at large. From the time the Freedom Charter was agreed to, the clear intention was to allow the people to be close to their representatives, to allow for them to be seen to be governing with them. However, the kind of partnership that was envisaged in the Freedom Charter never materialized after the demise of apartheid. Furthermore, it quickly became clear that the continued arrangement to use the closed list proportional representation system was going to impede the transformation of South Africa and be detrimental to the interests of the majority, who had long suffered political oppression under both colonial and apartheid rule and continued to be excluded from economic life of South Africa. How was this problem to be solved? What could be done to allow for a greater level of accountability to the voters? Congress of the People believes that the closed list PR system be replaced with open list PR system. In this system, political parties will still put up a list and the outcome will still be proportional because provision for a single transferable vote will apply. The big difference is that voters will have the right to rearrange the order on the list. Voter preference will therefore be accommodated. A full explanation of how this will work is set out in our policy document. Constituency representation. The argument for combining proportionality with constituency representation is overwhelming. Only persons have the capability of representing voters in a granular manner, not political parties. To achieve this personal association with a public representative, each of South Africa's current 52 districts could, as per their population size, serve as larger or smaller multi-member constituency which could be contested by individuals as well as political parties through an open list proportional representation system. At present, most districts in South Africa are failing dismally and serially, with local government being in a perpetual and lamentable crisis. With the district becoming a constituency and a scaffolding of political representation becomes immediately possible in each district. Each district, therefore, will have councillors as well as dedicated representatives serving in the national and provincial legislatures as well. The continual requirement for intergovernmental cooperation will be meaningfully enhanced in this way at once. Full details of how the constituencies will work is set out in the policy document. The draft bill will therefore inter alia seek to amend 1. The Electoral Commission Act 1996, Act number 51 of 1996, so as to provide for and to regulate the registration of the independent candidates. Secondly, the Electoral Act 1998, Act number 73 of 1998, so as to inter alia give full effect to Section 19(3)(b) of the Constitution, which provides that every South African citizen has a fundamental right to stand for public office and, if elected, to hold office, to ensure that individuals can stand for office as independent candidates without having to stand for office by virtue of his or her membership of a political party, to provide for the creation of constituencies along current district boundary lines and the replacement of the closed list. Proportional representation system will, with the open system, proportional representation system with greater requirements for all candidates to uphold the Constitution and to give impetus to the realization of the Bill of Rights and to promote democratic governance and electoral accountability. And finally, any other relevant legislation so as to provide for independent candidates to participate in election broadcasts and political advertisements on an equitable basis with political parties, to provide for independent candidates to receive financial and administrative assistance to enable them to perform their functions effectively, and to provide for related and other consequential matters. Number 4 is that of the shrinking of the size of the national and provincial legislatures. We submit that a smaller government is preferable because we believe this will be more cost effective. Therefore, we are proposing that National Assembly should be constituted by a minimum of 350 seats as allowed for in Section 46(1) of the Constitution, rather than 400 seats. This will be made up of 300 seats elected via 52 constituencies, utilizing the group quota system, allowing for the transferability of surplus votes and the balance of the 50 seats by virtue of the national ballot in exactly the same manner. As for the provincial legislatures, we are proposing that the number be reduced from 430 to 300. The Constitution in Section 105 subsection 2 states, a provincial legislature consists of between 30 and 80 members. The number of members, which may differ among the provinces, must be determined in terms of a formula prescribed by national legislation. According to the formula we are suggesting, full details of which are in the policy document, 4 provinces will have a legislature of 30 members, another 4 of 35, and Gauteng will have a legislature of 40 members. Conclusion: although the bill is going to be in my name, let me assure you that many individuals contributed to its taking shape and form. Dr. Michael Louis made similar contributions, singular contributions. South Africans must see this bill as something coming out of the Freedom Charter and therefore belonging to every citizen. What we do in this bill will determine our future and our well-being. We are waiting for the government gazette when it comes to get the process formally underway. Interspersed parties and institutions are invited to submit written submissions on the proposed content of the draft bill to the Speaker of the National Assembly by 30th September 2020. Representations can be delivered to the Speaker, New Assembly Building, Parliament Street, Cape Town. And the address is given there, as well as to the Office of the Congress of the People here in the building. The address is also given there. Thank you.
Well, morning, members of the press. It's great to be with you this morning. And I think allow me just to introduce the team that are here, that afterwards, if there's any questions, then you know who to direct the questions to. But obviously, we're privileged to be with Honourable Member Lekota, that is the main sponsor of this bill and has been taking it to Parliament. And we're very privileged to be with him. On his right-hand side is Farouk Kasim, who's the technical officer on behalf of COPE. And so any technical questions regarding the bill that's going to be proposed, he's absolutely the ideal person to answer those questions. On my left is Mmusi Maimane, the chief activist of the One South Africa movement. And today him and Honourable Lekota are talking about their joint agreement of how they're going to mobilize the public to get and invite public participation regarding this bill. My name is Michael Louis. I was the originator of taking this process 4 years ago to the Constitutional Court, and have been busy right across now in helping cope in the technicalities of the final bill and taking it to Parliament. Colleagues, the main reason for today is, firstly, I'm wanting to just from my side say why this process and why it is a victory for the people of South Africa, because I'm an ordinary South African and we live in a constitutional state. And the first victory about this constitutional judgment is that it was a constitutional victory, and the judgment was that the Electoral Act was unconstitutional. And this is an ideal opportunity for every single one of us as South Africans now to take hands and to make our country a better country so as to reflect our mature democracy. This is not an anti-political party legislation. This is a One South Africa legislation where we all can be united. And personally, I can just say there's 4 reasons why I thought it important to motivate this legislation and take it to the Constitutional Court. Firstly, it was constitutionally invalid. Secondly, there were 10 million people that didn't vote in our elections in the last elections. We have to draft an electoral bill that is more inclusive and can attract those 10 million people back into our democracy. Thirdly, is that I don't believe that when we see how the municipalities have all collapsed, we need a more constituency-based system that we can nominate directly each one of our representatives. We can't allow political parties to represent people on our behalf. And the bill that's drafted is perfectly placed so that we, the people, can nominate our own leaders. So what was the process? The process was 4 years ago, we started with a Constitutional Court application, and I'm very pleased to announce this was no mean feat. It didn't just happen. It took 3 Constitutional Court cases, it took 3 High Court cases, it took 12 senior advocates, it took 9 applicants, it took 2 amicus curiae and a team of professionals to finally get this process over the finishing line. And what a victory for us as the people of South Africa. But what are we going to do now with the power that we've got to change this Electoral Act to really lead us to the promised land? And so the process at the moment is that a bill has been drafted, and I've been very privileged that Honourable Lekota, on behalf of COPE, took as a private member's motion this to Parliament 17 months ago. And that bill is now sitting in Parliament, and I'm very privileged to say that we've done 3 drafts of the electoral bill with 8 senior draftmen, 8 lawyers and advocates that have been drafting 17 months to get this bill to where it is. So we were really hoping that it was going to be published on this Friday, but it's going to be next Friday. But because September the 30th is the deadline for public submissions, we really wanted to make this announcement rather sooner than later, so that we can get the public to participate and to see how the new system and the new electoral act is that we're proposing. So what's happening now is that in the month of September, we are hoping that the Legal Advisory Division of Parliament will certify the bill formally. Then it will go to the Standing Committee, and the Standing Committee will vote on desirability. And my challenge to the people out there, and especially the parliamentarians in the Standing Committee, this is not our bill. This is your bill. This is the people's bill. Please use that as a foundation of 17 months of hard work, so that we can look how together we can form a new democracy. And the good thing is about it is we've done most of the work. The only real work is in Schedule 1A, which deals with the mechanics of how will the election look like. How will you nominate direct members from your constituency? How many constituencies will there be? What are the qualifying criteria? Those are technical issues in Schedule 1A. The rest of the work has been done. So my pleas to the public out there, this bill is now going into the public sphere. Mmusi will be traveling the country in the next 7 days, motivating this bill, asking for public participation, and we really invite the public, by virtue of this announcement, to really get down and to make our country a better country. I now will hand over to Farouk just to talk about some of the technical aspects of the bill that Honourable Lekota spoke about.
Members of the press, thank you very much. You know, it has been my great pleasure to have been a member of Parliament in 1994 when we saw the change over from the apartheid period to the new democratic period. And as my leader pointed out, we were always focused on the idea that the people shall govern. So the question was, what needed to be done to make that happen? And the first and most important thing was to change from a closed list PR system to an open list PR system. So that in an open list PR system, a party can nominate its candidates in whichever order it wants. But it is the voters then who rearrange what that final list should be. And in this way, they put people in that would then be really acceptable to them. Secondly, this idea of scaffolding. We all know that the municipal system is failing because the municipal system is left on its own. The intergovernmental provision in the Constitution is not working. But now if you can scaffold that, so at the bottom you have the local government, then above that the provincial government, and then above that the national, and all of them serving in that constituency together. It means the full impact of all government levels will be felt at the district level. So we thought that that was important. And we've also known for a long time that the country is in a parlous state. The state debt now stands at 4 trillion rands, and the daily interest is over 550 million rands per day. That's what it's costing in interest. Imagine if that money could be made available for development. So that is why the idea of reducing the number from 400 to 350, as is provided for in the Constitution, and to remove 130 MPLs, because provincial government doesn't need 430 MPLs. So if you make it leaner, more efficient, better people come in, then the money that we have will be better utilized. So we want to see that happen, and if you've got any other technical questions, I will answer, but we will also provide you with a policy document which explains all of the reasoning, all of the thinking, and all of the research that indicates why the system will work, and it will work for the betterment of South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes,
stood here to make it a lot easier. Bagathi dumelang. I literally will not be long. When I left the corridors of Parliament a number of months ago now, I went out to meet South Africans from all walks of life. The first truth and reality for many citizens is that they're tired of politicians. In many ways, as South Africa heads over 50% unemployment, many citizens do not feel safe in their own communities. Many citizens feel they've lost a voice. Today, we have promulgations of the Disaster Management Act, and South Africans have had to use court actions, have had to use various other mechanisms in order to make their voice heard, instead of having the very essence of democracy, which is to have people speak on their behalf. Today, we know very well of the beneficiaries of public protective equipment that have been looted all the way throughout the country. And what that effectively means is that these are school children without masks, these are healthcare workers without masks, and more than anything, if they do get masks, those are inflated at a price of 50 Rand to 60 Rand a mask. So not only is the country besieged with corruption by its own public representatives, the public is voiceless in the matter. So what we could do in South Africa is add more and more political parties. We could have a ballot list next year or in the next national elections of over 50 to 55 political parties. That does not change the system. So when we started and built a One South Africa movement, we were motivated by the simple question: can we get the best 350 people to run the government? Because the truth is, in Parliament, if all of us had to be honest with ourselves, the question must always stand: do we have the best 350? And if we do get the best 350, do those 350 or 300 speak on yours and my behalf? That's the question. Democracy was designed so that it gives power to individuals to represent us, but it also makes mechanisms for us to monitor and be able to provide oversight over that power. So today I'm here to make just a few announcements. We launch the direct election bill that Mmusi Lekota is tabling here in Parliament. And it's got to be called the direct election bill because we believe that it gives meaning to what the drafters of the Constitution wanted in the first place. The drafters of the Constitution knew that democracy needed to represent the people and be for the people, by the people. And therefore this is important. The second matter is that if we get the bill right, of course, it amends only the Electoral Act. There are many stories out there that says, no, the Constitution must be amended. No, the Constitution makes it possible for 350 members. The Constitution makes it possible for a new Electoral Act and many other laws that speak to direct funding, etc., to be amended, and that requires a simple majority in Parliament so that the people can be given effect to that. Now, the Constitutional Court has given this Parliament 24 months to be able to do that. And what I'm here to also announce today is that I begin a tour right across the country to do two things: to engage citizens about what kind of democracy they want. I'll be going to communities, in rural communities and urban cities, where we can ask people there, why is the best person not coming from amongst them, but rather in a traditional party system where they simply impose a person upon the citizens? Now what we're asking is that let the people give us the best 350. So we will go across. I will begin in the next number of weeks to go across the country, engage people, hear from citizens. Thirdly, and most crucially, is that, as you can see, this is a collaborative process. It is the people's bill. So the work that Dr. Louis has done, Honorable Kasim and Honorable Lekota have done in tabling the direct elections bill here in Parliament as a private member's bill has to be supported by public consultation. And we're calling upon all citizens to make their submissions. Ntate Lekota has already directed as to how those submissions can be done. You can send your submissions to Parliament itself. You can send it to the Congress of the People. You can email us at info@onesouthafrica or osa.org.za. You can email your submissions. Why is that important that we get the best public participation? Because what we don't want is for the crooks who are being protected by the current system. That's why no one has been arrested. Because if someone is found to be corrupt here, they get promoted in Parliament. They get moved to positions. So if the crooks are asked to account, they'll never do it. So what we're here to ask for is that actually the process mustn't just be dependent on what Parliament does. Citizens have got the power to communicate that and to make their submissions. So that in the long run, when we get a bill, it represents all of South Africa. So I'll be going across to not only engage citizens, but so that their submissions are felt. So that when the public participation process of the bill is done, much better effect is given. So fellow South Africans, the tour starts now. The direct elections must go. Let us pick on the best. Let's make our voices heard, and that by the 30th of September, we'll be able to hear from the people of South Africa what needs to happen. And as One South Africa movement, this is one of the very fundamental things we believe that we must reform. Because a commission after commission, we've just looked at the Marikana Commission, and those recommendations were never implemented. Now we have the Zondo State Capture Commission. What's going to happen to those recommendations? Well, history has taught us, whether it was from the Defense Bill Commission, whether it's the Marikana Commission, now the State Capture Commission, is that they arrive at the desk of the president, they become well received, we become animated as citizens, and then after that nothing happens because the people come back to Parliament. Now we want to build into a bill that if your member of Parliament is not doing their job, you can move a motion to have that person removed because you are electing them. Because once you do that, then accountability is back with the people. People know the people who have stolen from them in their community. All we are seeking to do is to give them the power to hold those people to account. If we are going to win against corruption, state capture, we have to start with party capture, list capture, before we get to state capture. Because people are captured in the party before they can capture the state, and then corrupt business people capture them. So today starts that journey, and we wanted to be here on the steps of Parliament to tell the people of this country that this is not MPs' Parliament, this is the people's Parliament. And if the people want to make submissions, if the people want to give effect to the Constitution, they can do so, and the direct elections bill is already tabled. So fellow South Africans, that is for us a journey that we are beginning today. I want to take some questions, so if there are questions then I can direct them to members so that I don't keep you here outside here for too long.
I think one of my assumptions partly answered it, but I just want to ask both of you, maybe if I'm correct to say that part of the reasons for you to introduce this bill is that you feel that the current system is not accountable to the people, but to parties and politicians. I want you to answer that maybe first, if I'm right, anyway.
Yeah.
Secondly, the fact that to say you want to cut Parliament members from 400 to 350, I seem to be getting some undertones there that you feel that the whole system actually is bloated. Am I correct?
Well, if I give some insight into that, then I'll hand over to Ntate Lekota. There are a few crucial things. Already South Africa's fiscus is under real pressure. Right? We all know that. We all know that now we are a country that is living from, I wouldn't even say hand to mouth. It's effectively from the hand of the IMF to the mouth. We are living from debt to debt. The real challenge is this, though, is that we are not borrowing from today's generation. We are borrowing from my kids and your kids. It's their education, it's their safety, it's their health care that we are borrowing against. Soon, it's a matter of time, we'll be telling people that we can't give them more police or we can't give them more health care because we'll run out of money. Money doesn't grow on trees. So the first thing is that you must reduce the number of members of Parliament to 350. The Constitution already prescribes so. It says that the National Assembly will be made of 350 members and a maximum of 400. We're saying let's exercise the duty of 350. The second dynamic to this issue is that actually, if you reduce provincial governments also, you suddenly find yourself in a space where you can use that fiscus not only to form more departments, more security, more all of that. You can reduce it, make sure the resources are designed for the people. The truth is, we spend more on the executive security than we do in certain parts of the country. Citizens are not protected to the level that they could be. So reduce all of that. So to your then second question, if South Africa is going to head in a new direction, it needs profound reform. You can't keep playing the same way and hope for a different outcome. Therefore, that's why as One South Africa, one of our key pillars is electoral and direct election. That's what we're saying. So the big trick there is that if you can reduce the system, make it a smaller government, make sure there aren't these many ministers. I mean, we've seen now in COVID, I can't tell you where half the ministers are doing today. South Africans can't tell you. Reduce the executive, reduce the government, overhaul the system, make people accountable to people, then we'll know. It's not up to the ANC to tell us who stole from VBS or not. The people know who stole from VBS. So they should remove those people. Not to wait for the party to have an internal congress and an internal process. Let the people remove the people. So what we're simply calling for is direct elections, direct accountability.
No, thanks. I think you've covered everything. It's critical that we should say to the people, we want political power in your hands so that you, when you see people stealing your resources, you can stop them. You are the one who can look after your interests, and we know that you will do so. But as long as you put political power in the hands of a group called a political party, which meets where you are not present, which choose friends among itself and put them in charge, you can forget about ever getting the benefits of your labor. That is the issue that we need to deal with. And this is what this bill is about. It's about the people being given power, and that's why the people at the Congress of the People said the people shall govern. When the people govern, they can put you in power, they can remove you if you are not doing what they want. And that is the secret of what we are trying to do today here.
Achim Tarana from Museum Africa. I just have two simple questions. Perhaps I'm going to start off by saying, is there a specific reason why you decided to work with Pope? Maybe you can just help me understand that. And also, you're saying repeatedly that you want the power to go back to the people and you're going to be visiting various provinces. How exactly will this process unfold? So you want the citizens to be able to hold the executive accountable. So how will this process unfold exactly? Can you make us understand that? And are you looking at coming back into Parliament?
Let me in taking your three questions, Lekota 17 months ago, even when I was here in Parliament, tabled the private member's bill, at least moved here in Parliament to focus on direct elections as a principle. So we as One South Africa, along with, and remember, when we say this is about all citizens, we mean that. We've worked with the New Nation movement as an argument. We're working as One South Africa movement, working with the Congress of the People, and I'm calling upon parties who agree on this issue. Because this is not an issue of ideology. This is about giving effect to the Constitution.
Are there other parties that...
So we are looking at various civil society organizations. I can promise you now there are trade unions that we are engaging that are already saying, yes, we want to direct elections. You would have even heard even this weekend at the Marikana massacre commemoration that there was a strong call to say we want direct elections. Already, there are many other formations. That's why I'm going even across the country to coalesce with them and many more who will come on board. Even in sectors of academia, people are already putting their arguments on the table because the purpose is to move all of South Africa together to build a people's bill. And I would put money on the fact that if there are still constitutionalists left inside the ANC, they would agree with the fact that we need direct elections. So I think it is important that we come back to this table. The only problem is that obviously they might want to obfuscate the matter by protecting themselves in their stomachs and forgetting that actually the Constitution gives power to the people. That's the first. The second is, you asked me the question, which is very important, why the bill then becomes necessary. When you create multi-member constituencies across the country, at this point in time, a party political list, you go to the ballot, you vote for party X. That party delivers a list. You don't know who's in that list. For all you know, all those people could have criminal records. For all you know, those people might not even come from your area. So how is that power to the people? Whereas if you have a constituency-based system, which is what the direct election bill proposes, it says when you go vote, now in your ballot, rather than just simply saying I'm voting nationally, you can say I live in Roodepoort, I live in Soweto, I live in Lusikisi. I am here to vote for Mr. So-and-so. Now Mr. So-and-so might have party affiliation or Mrs. So-and-so. But what you are then doing is, you know the person, you are voting directly for them, and it's you who are sending them to parliament. Because if we work it right, they must come from your community. You see? And so that reforms the entire electoral way we are used to voting. That's what the Constitution, or at least the judgment a month ago, gave effect to. It said now, let the independents be able to stand, but if you want to give full effect to them, now you can reform the electoral system.
Logistically, how does an ordinary South African then hold that person to account?
Now, the second part of that is that when you talk about accountability, when you set up a constituency-based system, already in the allocations of budgets, there are constituency allocations on the table. Our envisaged way is that members of parliament must hold constituency offices so that people can interact with them regularly. If they don't do the work, you can then request through the IEC to say you want to hold an election to remove that particular individual. Because then you are holding them directly, because you are talking to an individual. So in practical terms, it makes the elections move from grand national lists to the constituency, to the community, to hold the person accountable.
Maybe to answer your question, we can ask you a question. Today you are a voter. I don't know how many years you've been voting. Who represents you in this parliament? If somebody asked you, who represents you in parliament? What are they doing for you? And so on. You can't say who. Indirect, in a system with accountability, with this system that we are proposing, you'll be able to say, well, we in our community voted for so-and-so. That who represents us there. And if it is said that that person has stolen money, you know what to do. You can summon that person. You can call for them to be knocked out and to put somebody in there that will be accountable to you. That person must come and explain why they did that. If they didn't, if they don't account for that, you can get rid of them. At the moment, you say you are represented by the ANC. Okay, who is the ANC here in this? Who is the ANC? Because every day we are told about how many members of the ANC have stolen money. How many of them have stolen this or stolen that, have bought cars, have stolen this PPE of the people, but nothing happens. Think about the people of who died in life as a demand. No one individual has been held accountable for the people of SDMA. But the money that we budgeted in here, it went out, but we can't tell you where that money went. That is what we want to cure.
See, people mustn't say when they come and sign up in parliament, you take an oath to the constitution. But what they really mean is that they take an oath just when it's said and done. When they violate the constitution, it's the party that protects them. If you violate the constitution, you must be removed by the people, because that's the power enshrined in the Constitution. Let me take one last question and then we can take individual
Going
ones.
back into Parliament.
Okay, Parliament? Well, I think as I'm going around the country, I want the best 350. So when the law is reformed, you and I can have that conversation, because I want people to serve the people. And you must be sent by the people to Parliament. That is what I believe in. So I'll be going across the country in one South Africa to identify the best 350. And if the people feel I'm one of those 350, let them nominate, we'll move from it. Okay?
Hi, Christian, this is from Netwerk 24. Mr. Maimane, how do you think there is a risk that this amendment to the Electoral Act will be abused by political parties to suit their specific needs, or is that not a possibility at all? That's my only question.
Of course, I think the biggest mistake we could make in this country, the biggest mistake, having given the judgment, that I think would take away from the power, and that's the abuse we've got to protect. Because let me give you a practical example. Netuli Madonsela is not a member of a political party, for as far as I know. What if she wanted to stand for Parliament? What if she said, I will stand as a representative of the people? The mistake we could make is just to say, fine, let's just put your name on a ballot and hope people will find you. That doesn't give power to the people. Let's reform. If we want to change South Africa, to me, if we want to build the new South Africa, then we hit the reset button. This is the way to do it. And the big parties often have their own self-interest rather than the interest of the people. And I'm saying to them, don't put obstacles in the people participating in democracy. Make it possible. Because their fear is this, is that they know if you lose at Nazareth, you can go stand as an independent. And now suddenly, the party is over, if I could say it like that. Because the party must, and so let's stop obsessing about what happens at Nazareth. Let's obsess about what happens at the ballot box. Because if we can fix the obsession with Nazareth, then we'll know the people are not working for Nazareth. They are working for South Africa. That is all we are asking.
I think just one other thing, if maybe Dr. Louis can tell us where you can access the policy document, because that then will give you the months and months of discussion that took place and how we arrived finally at the position that we have. And more people that understand what's in that policy document, the better it will be for them to have an informed discussion. So maybe Dr. Louis can tell us where you can find it.
No, I think the good thing about this whole thing, I even learned as a legal drafter that you first have to have a policy before you can actually draft good legislation. So what we did is we got 8 professional legal people that looked at the Constitution, looked at the Electoral Act, and for all these months sat and analyzed it and drafted a policy. And that policy document is something that you've got in your press packs, but everybody can write to the COPE officers or to the 1SA officers. It's in your press pack, and we'll give you all the necessary details of the policy of how this electoral bill is actually drafted, because it's a complicated legal document. But that's how you can apply for the policy document. And it's, Mmusi actually taught me, it's not called a policy document, it's called the direct election bill. It's a much better thing. So I think that's the way we want to do it.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. You can pick it up on our website also. We'll put it up there, and then you can pick up the document. Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right, then welcome to On Point. Of course, then just finishing off that briefing then as well, of course, out in Parliament then. Things slightly different, of course, as they usually are at a time like this. It certainly gets interesting as to where we go to from here. Cases of COVID-19 as well in the country. Certainly still going up, but by a smaller proportion, so quite interesting on that front. We'll continue to give you more news though and more headlines.